Hey there, folks, and welcome to a potentially controversial and very late Marvel Month video. I'm going to be sharing my favorite superheroes from my youth, from until now, based on their impact on me from comics, TV shows, video games, and movies. So, unless you're Jean Grey and you already read my mind, I'm just going to jump right in and tell you the first choice.
Honorable mention, Scarlet Witch.
While I don't know her well enough to be a proper number on this list, that doesn't make her any less of an awesome character. She has a really cool history that hasn't really been able to be fully explored in the movies, thanks to stupid legal issues, and her grappling with the good and bad sides of having powers makes her a more interesting, nuanced character than her brother in a lot of ways. My main knowledge of her comes from the XMen Evolution show, where she was torn between the X-Men and her father Magneto, and I really enjoyed the episodes that focused on her because you understood her struggle, and the fact that she was so powerful that you really wanted her on your side made that struggle even more important, because she was an invaluable weapon for good or evil. This was further proven in Captain America Civil War, where she has to live with the guilt of how little control she has over her powers sometimes, and how surprisingly easy she is to brainwash. Plus, now she's played by Elizabeth Olsen, who I love. So, enough said.
Number 10, Gambit.
Gambit is another one of those characters I just thought was so cool as a kid. He has a cool guy look with his trench coat and staff, and a very unique power with his ability to essentially control kinetic energy, which for some reason he mostly channels through playing cards, because he's just cool like that. He's also another one that toes the line between good and bad sometimes, as he's essentially a hired hand, and I find those characters that have that shade of gray more interesting than, say, Captain America or Thor, who are just good guys all the time. It makes their fight more believable because they're doing good for a reason, not just because they have to, as the good guys. And unfortunately, while he has yet to be properly portrayed in the movies, and I doubt that Channing Tatum movie will do him any favors either, he's had some really good playable appearances in games like X-Men Mutant Apocalypse on the SNES, and in TV shows like the cheesy 90s X-Men show, and also X-Men Evolution.
Number 9, Rocket and Groot.
I know this is technically 2, but they're a package deal, so it counts. I'm mostly focusing on Rocket anyway, because he's the coolest. But his relationship with Groot is one of his defining features, so it's hard to talk about why Rocket is on the list without at least mentioning Groot. While I never knew about them until development started on Guardians of the Galaxy, that was enough to sell me on how amazing they are. Just the idea of a raccoon that can talk and his tree friend that only he can understand is so ridiculous, you have to at least be interested in what their deal is. So, after falling in love with the movie, I looked up their comic history a bit, and then picked up the first few issues of the first ever Rocket solo series by Scotty Young, and it was also amazing. His wit alone is enough to earn him a spot on this list. But his more endearing human qualities and his life-sacrificing relationship with Groot make him more than just a wisecracking mercenary and give him that gray area that I enjoy so much in my favorite characters. Plus my cat Callie kind of looks like him, so that's pretty cool.
Number 8, Rogue.
Rogue is really interesting more because of her powers than her actual background. She essentially takes the power of whoever she touches, which makes her one of the strongest mutants out there, and also one of the only people that is effective towards the big bads, if she can get close enough. But she also saps their life with a touch, which makes her a very lonely, tragic character, as she can't really make skin contact with many people, except those with healing factors or some other means of protecting themselves from her power. This means she has a very negative, bitter personality and doesn't make friends easily. Not a great trait as part of a team like the X-Men. But I relate to her because as a kid I also always felt like an outsider and didn't make friends easily. Not because I killed them with a touch, but still, the dichotomy is worth mentioning. She was also one of the first superheroes I felt a connection to as a kid thanks to the first X-Men movie, so she'll always have a special place in my heart because of those memories. And while I don't have a lot of memories of her comic book stories or anything outside of her giant hair and overall sassiness, she was great in the various cartoons when I was growing up. Plus, her and Gambit are my OTP, and if she's good enough for him, she's good enough for me.
Number 7, Iron Man.
Another one I barely knew about before the movies, aside from Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems on SNES, Iron Man proved his worth to me in the first Marvel Studios movie, where I was won over by Robert Downey Jr. in the role, who showed me just how cool of a character I had missed out on all those years. Looking back at his roots, I'm kinda glad I didn't know about him earlier, because the first appearances of Iron Man were terrible. Big, generic tin can man would not have won any favors from me as a kid. But he's the perfect character for modern times, as the technology available has finally made him feel not only relevant, but realistic. And the character's perfect blend of wit, intelligence, and tragedy make him a cool hero that can be a symbol of the superheroes in that universe without him becoming Marvel's Batman. Also in the comics, as well as in Captain America Civil War, he's the one that recruits and trains Spider-Man as a member of the Avengers. So again, good enough for him, good enough for me.
Number 6. Nightcrawler.
Bamf! That is both the sound he makes and what he is. A bamf. Another one of my favorites from X-Men Evolution, I grew attached because of his snarky personality in that show, and his cool power set. Plus it's funny that he leaves behind a scent of sulfur when he teleports. Not really a benefit of the character, just an amusing bit of trivia that ties into his father Azazel. This is another character with a very interesting backstory, and just an overall cool character arc. He also has a unique set of powers that make him an asset in any fight, though the games haven't quite gotten him right yet. He's a bit heavy-handed in his religious characterization. I prefer when that's downplayed, but I understand it as a necessity for his origin. But I love the connection to his family, as his mother and father were villains, but he feels drawn to the good guys, even though the world sees him as a freak who could never be a symbol for good. It gives him an added level of depth and sympathy that just his powers on their own wouldn't give him, and make him way cooler than that other blue guy beast.
Number 5. Professor X.
Aside from the majesticness that is Patrick Stewart perfectly encapsulating the role, not that James McAvoy has done a bad job, Professor X is also just one of the most iconic characters in the X-Men canon, if not the entire Marvel universe. He's famously one of the strongest mutants out there, and has gone toe-to-toe with pretty much everyone and won. I also find his on-and-off-again bromance with Magneto really interesting, and one of the best, most nuanced rivalries in the history of the medium. High praise for a man that prefers a wheelchair over using his powers to just float around everywhere. It doesn't hurt that it's nearly impossible to hide anything from him, between his ability to mind read and his psychic connection with all mutants through Cerebro, making him an invaluable asset in battle. It's just a shame Marvel has created so many other superpowered telepaths just so he occasionally has a threat, because it makes him less original as a result. But he's still the best of them all.
Number 4. Iceman.
I've never really understood why, but Iceman has always been my favorite of the X-Men. Maybe it's because of his storied friendship with Spider-Man, or maybe it's because I've had a soft spot for Shawn Ashmore since his Animorph days. So when I saw him in the first X-Men movie, I was like, man, that character is going to be awesome. But he's just such a cool character, and he travels by skating around on his own ice roads, which is both practical and hilarious every time I see it. Plus, he's always got that whole, fire and ice thing going on with the various other fire characters in Marvel history. Seriously, there's Human Torch, Hellfire, Pyro, Firestorm, Firebrand, Magma, etc. Point is, I really like characters with a focus on duality like that.
Number 3. Deadpool.
What is there to say about Deadpool that others, and Deadpool himself, haven't already said? Nothing really, so let's move on.
Wait. That's it? I'm basically the top of your list behind... I don't really know who other than Spider-Man, and you're just gonna move on after one line? What kind of uninspired script writing is that? I had to say the terrible shit that Daniel Way wrote for me for years. I know bad writing.
Sorry, Deadpool, but as much as I love your comics, you've become a bit overplayed in pop culture. There's just nothing else original to say since you got so popular.
And why the fuck is that my fault? You're the one making hackneyed YouTube videos. Don't talk to me about overplayed. Say something to justify my spot on this list. Jesus! Who do I have to kill to get some appreciation? 'Cause I'll do it. I'm very good at killing people. You've seen my work. You know that.
Jeez, fine. While I enjoy the humor and wackiness of Deadpool as a character, I also love the things about him that most people gloss over. like his tragic backstory and occasional hero streak, trying to join the XMen, saving the world multiple times, and teaming up with various other heroes such as Spider-Man and Daredevil, even though he spent the whole time claiming he was just in it for the money. I felt like later, as he started to gain more popularity, really starting around when Christopher Priest took over and started bringing in more absurd elements and turning Deadpool more farcical and sometimes just plain stupid. At his core, he's still the deeply tragic, reluctant superhero who's in a constant state of never being able to die from cancer. But too many of his books revolve around absurdist humor and pop culture references these days to make him stand out as much as his more nuanced roots did.
Sorry. I thought you were gonna praise me, not go all Siskel and Ebert on me. They still do movie review stuff, or did they die? Yeah, don't answer that. I don't care, or have time for another rant from you. I'm off to borrow Wolverine's claws for a weenie roast. Have fun with your pathetic attempt at whatever this internet fame crap is.
Oh, hey, before I move on to the people I like more than you, why do you sound like a terrible impersonation of Ryan Reynolds?
Well, that's simple. You couldn't afford the real thing, obviously. I'm like the mall Santa version of Deadpool. I'm good enough for the kids, but fake and smelling like regret and bottom shelf tequila. Ciao.
Makes sense.
Number 2, Spider-Man.
Surprised? I know, I talk about Spider-Man constantly. How could he not be my number 1? Well, you'll see soon enough. But with so many different Spider people out there these days, I thought I should specify I'm talking about the OG Spider guy here, not any of the later versions made to complicate things. Though, Spider-Gwen is awesome. If she wasn't so new, she'd probably be on this list too. He was not only the character that made me care about comic books and superheroes in the first place, but he's also just one of the most relatable characters out there as far as superpowered freaks are concerned. He wasn't some millionaire that built a supersuit or some god or an alien from another planet. He was just a kid that got bitten and had to learn how to adjust. And when I was growing up and looking for role models, who better to carry me through than some kid who has to find time between homework and friends to fight crime? It's every kid's dream. Sure, some of the movies didn't paint him in the best light, and his comic book history has gotten extremely muddied over the decades he's been around in order to keep things new and interesting. But the core of his character has always been there. He's just some kid that had great power thrust upon him and had to learn the meaning of great responsibility to go with it. If you prefer your superhero stories with a touch of realism, it doesn't get much more down to earth than that.
Number 1, Spider-Man.
Okay, so you caught me. My number 1 is still Spider-Man, but can you blame me for putting him twice? These two characters couldn't be more different, despite sharing the same alter ego. And while Miles has only been around for about 5 years, he's made a huge impression on me in that time. Miles Morales received his powers at the troubling age of 13 after his criminal uncle steals a radioactive spider sample from Norman Osborn's factory. His powers are largely the same, but due to the experiments Osborn was doing it to improve the Spider-Man experiments, Miles also has a cool cloaking ability and the power to send out a paralyzing shock on contact, which provides him with new ways of taking down, or avoiding, enemies and a more diverse gallery of rogues that can be written to meet the scope of these powers. He also went quite a while without the ability to web swing because he's not the tech genius that Peter was, so he had to get his hands on the now dead former Spider-Man's webbing so that his only friend could try to figure out how it worked and make more. Are you hooked yet? Because the reason I like him more is because his backstory feels fresh compared to the same Uncle Ben-type story they've rehashed with Peter over his various reboots in comics, movies, and TV. Miles is raised by 2 parents, but afraid he'll go down a similar criminal path of the other males in his family. So when he receives the powers as a result of those criminal activities, and has to grapple with his new status quo at such a young age, you really feel for him emotionally. To be so young and swept up into such deep issues, as well as world-ending crises and multiple run-ins with S.H.I.E.L.D., really molded him into a better, more selfless hero at a younger age. And a large part of that is why he's now the Spider-Man in the Marvel Universe, after the Ultimate Universe was destroyed along with much of its cast of characters. Now, Peter is still around but taking a backseat approach, basically bankrolling Miles' efforts much like Tony did for Peter a generation before. But Miles has taken the forefront as a fan favorite, and he won my heart in the first few issues of his Ultimate Spider-Man run back in 2011. It doesn't hurt that he was voiced by Donald Glover, one of my favorite actors of all time, in the Ultimate Spider-Man show last year. Now, if only we can convince Hollywood that a Miles Morales movie would do well so they would stop rehashing the same Peter Parker stories and all these reboots, and we can finally get a Spider-Man movie that feels original. So, how does my list hold up to yours? Mad that it's so full of X-Men and characters made popular by the recent string of movies? Feel cheated by 2 Spider-Men? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, but let me tell you, coming up with this list was way harder than I thought it would be. I guarantee I missed at least one fan favorite while thinking of characters that have had an impact over the years. But, until next time, have fun, fellow heroes.
Welcome to the end of the video, everyone. Friendly neighborhood Deadpool here, back from my weenie roast. Even though I was 3rd place behind 2 fucking Spider-Men, I agreed to pop back in and give some thanks. So first off, thanks to Ninja Jordan for drawing me. This is the cutest I've been since the Deadpool movie credits. Would you fuck me? I'd fuck me. Secondly, thanks to Ray31X. Wait a minute, that's me. For giving me my voice, which makes this segment super meta. But I digress. They're both amazing people, and you should show them all the love. Jeez, this writing really is worse than way. I'd never say this shit for real. Anyway, my contractual obligations are done here. Hasta luego. I want tacos now.